What would you do if you got stuck on an island in the middle of the ocean? A few months ago, I got stranded and had to figure it out. I had already been to India, but I decided to go back because it's one of my favorite countries in the world. I land in Mumbai, get some delicious food, meet some awesome new people, and see some new sights. Now, someone tells me about the Andaman Islands, and the way they talk about it, I expect something just like this. Before I know it, I book a ticket to the islands. Things were okay there, but I realized they were not exactly as I thought they would be. I meet some people, drive a scooter around the island, but I quickly realized that a tiny island with overpriced food, dirty beaches, and no Wi-Fi connection is not exactly my cup of tea. So I decide I want to go back to the big island and catch a flight back to mainland India. I asked the hotel manager to book me onto the ferry for the next morning, but he tells me that there won't be any boats the next day because the weather is really bad. Now, I'm pretty confused because the weather looks like this. Honestly, I feel as though he just wants to continue making a few bucks out of me if I stay at the hotel, but I'm too tired to argue with him at that point, so I just tell myself I'll stay an extra night and leave the next day. The following day, the same story happens again, and he tells me that the weather is too bad for any ferries to come pick us up. At this point, I'm looking at him like,
why you always lying? Oh my god, stop fucking lying.
But I let it slide and I stay one more night. Now on the third day of this back and forth, I make it very clear to him that I have a flight coming up the next day and that I need to get on the ferry for the next morning. He finally agrees, signs me up for a boat the next day, and he tells me that possibly I'll be able to get on the boat. We're getting somewhere. So I get back to my room, I pack my bags, and the next day I go to the port. And this is what I see. Updates, you can see the crowd of literal people right here. Everyone's trying to wait for the boats. Now, everyone is speaking a language I cannot understand, everyone seems super confused, but we can all agree on one thing. There are no boats in sight. I go to the police station to try and get some information, and that's when they finally told me that there's been a kind of typhoon or cyclone close to the island which has made the water unsailable for the past couple of days. They also told me that there's a high possibility that we could not leave the island on that day because a Navy ship was coming to rescue us, but there's about 50 places on the boat, and at that point we were just a bit more than 1,000 people on the island waiting for a spot. At that moment, the gravity of the situation did not really register into my brain because the only two things that I really heard were, "You might not leave, 50 spots." I start to panic, and clearly I'm not the only one in that state of mind. Things were looking a bit like this. Everyone's talking to the police. But starting to feel a lot like this. After waiting for about 8 hours for a boat that might not even come, I see one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. The Navy boat had arrived to save us, but that is not the end of the story. Actually, the big struggles had just started. Remember when the police officer told me there was only 50 spots on the boat? Well, he wasn't lying. Now I was amongst 1,000 people trying to plead their case as to why they were the one deserving of one of those 50 spots. After my fair share of being pushed around and pushing back, I finally managed to convince one of the guards that I should have one of the spots because I had my flight in the early morning. I got on the boat, there was a little bed for each of us, and after 4 hours of rocky sailing, we finally made it back to the big island. And I feel pretty safe being with the Navy, so keep you updated on how the journey goes. I was really glad to have my spot on the boat, but it's only when I got to the big island that the gravity of the situation started to sink in. There were hundreds of people waiting for us at the port. army troops, TV reporters, journalists, even local politicians. There's some kind of photo operation going on, flashes going up everywhere, people asking us questions about the rescue, and that's when it hit me that I was not just stranded on an island without Wi-Fi, but I was actually stuck because of a typhoon, and that I had just been rescued by the Navy. Thankfully, all was well after that point, and I managed to continue my travels without any other big issues. Do you have any intense travel stories? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button as well, and tune in next week for some more videos.